Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com and powered by all the Mopros out there. I am your host, Michael Hartmann, flying solo as a host this week because we are recording this during Mopsapalooza 2025. So if you're there and listening to this later, we hope you had a good time there. Mike and Naomi, I'm sure we'll be back soon. In fact, we've got planned a recap, so watch for that when coming into your inbox. So today, I am joined by Tracey Fudge. She is an AI operations architect and agentic workflow designer, and she's doing that on her own with her consultancy AI by Thrive. Tracey has spent the last few years deep in the AI trenches, experimenting with language models, automation frameworks, and what she calls agentic workflows. She helps marketing and operations teams not just understand technology, but actually put it to work. So today we're going to be talking about how to move beyond the AI buzzwords, not that those are out there, to build real usable systems that save time, spark creativity, and drive better business outcomes. So Tracey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm
Yeah,
really excited, and I'm missing MOPSA, but I'm there virtually and in my heart. A lot of my friends are there.
me too. I have serious FOMO going on right now.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad, but I'm grateful that we've been able to stitch this together. I was going back to some of the conversations that you and I had to try to get this started. It went all the way back to, it is now late October. And I think we started in February sometimes. So
Yeah.
um, good things come to those who wait, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, let's start with this. Like, let's start with maybe a little bit of like a short version of your journey. In particular, like the last couple of years, like what led you from marketing and operations, kind of the traditional one we were just chatting about this before we started recording about how so many people are still focused on platforms, and getting you into AI systems, agentic workflows, things like that.
Yeah, so it was an easy transition. Well, one, I've been in tech my whole career. I started in software sales before I really understood what software was. My explanation was, well, what's software? And it was like, I don't know. I think it goes on hardware. So that's how far back it goes.
You're not going to start talking about floppy disk drives, are you?
There was a day when software was a new word. And so then fell into MOPS. I was managing a social media platform for somebody, and they're like, hey, can you go manage this email platform we have? And that's and most people fall into MOPS by
Yeah,
accident. You don't start, there's no college courses or anything like that.
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. But the AI part of it was just something that was just intriguing to me. And, systems are connected via API. So the agentic part of it was already being done. We just weren't calling it that, right?
Mm.
So when I decided to go deep and really learn, on what agentic platforms were, I had known Zapier and Zapier, nobody really knows quite how to call
They told us we've had people on from there. It is Zapier, like
it
happier is what they told
Zapier.
us. Not
That's
that
what
we're like we're not. This is not a promotional thing, but I think I now have that rhyme in my head.
and I don't know how far back you've been using it, but I was using it before people did correct me on what to call it. And so that's been, gosh, I mean, well over 10 years. But anyway, the whole AI part of it, the agentic part of it was sort of an easier transition to sort of understand what this all meant. And obviously I was curious about, well, what's an LLM? And oh, there's other types of LLMs. Oh, what do these frontier models mean? And then putting them all together and making the intelligence layer over the connections. And that's much more complex than people realize, because you go into the conversations around data. And when you're inside of an organization, sometimes marketing doesn't have all the data or the systems. Systems sit over there. So that's a big gap that's still there. And teams are starting to come together and realize that AI kind of goes over the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And AI needs to work on the same set of data, not the same fields per se, but let's all talk about the same data. Let's make sure that the pipeline reflects in the CRM, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really where I got into it. And it's still a new field. People, frankly, don't understand it. They think it's just workflows. Oh, just
Right.
go build 6 workflows, and
Yeah.
that makes it, and that's not it either. Um, it's part of it, but certainly when you're looking at a business, you've got to connect it all together. And
Yeah.
finance needs to have the same initiatives as RevOps, as MOps. I mean, it needs to all flow together.
Yes, I think that's the goal, right? The only thing you said something that marketing sometimes doesn't have all the data, and I would push back a bit on that and say that like, I think most marketing teams have more data than they know what to do with,
Mm-hmm.
and probably lack skills and knowledge to be able to do much with it. Is like to me that's the bigger gap. Is not data itself, but the ability to understand it.
Yeah, and I think I would say that you are correct in that aspect. When I think of data, I mean the ability to action on it, to add some predictive analytics,
Right.
to be able to hold the data in a sandbox and just kind of play around with it, apply some machine learning, some prediction, and that way your lead scoring is a little bit better. But if you're still saying because person A watched webinar X, let's give them 5 points, and it doesn't
Right.
take into account all the other things that said prospect or lead did along the way.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, well, so you kind of hinted at this when you were talking about this, but something you said to me, which I've been thinking about, is that you said AI isn't really new, that it's automation and data taken to another level. I think is the way you put it.
Mhm.
Like, what do you mean by that? Break that down a little bit.
So hooking up, let's say HubSpot to Clay or HubSpot to Salesforce, that happens for the most part out of the box, right? API, field match. Um, so that's already sort of an agentic portion connecting APIs. I think when you add in the intelligence layer, for instance, if you were to drop the data that's moving over to the marketing automation platform, drop that into a knowledge play, an LLM node to do something with the data, make
Right.
decisions, apply tags, do whatever. And maybe that when you drop it into, say, N8N, and I'm making reference to things that we all know or to a Zapier. But the point is that connection doesn't have to be direct anymore. You pause it, you do things with it, and then you map it.
Right.
And then you iterate, and that mapping can change. So it's that part of it that is new. But the actual technical API stuff, even installing a platform like an N8N, things things are so easier to understand once you've developed on one platform. You can do it on another. One CRM largely looks like another,
Sure.
minus some capabilities, but the concepts are the same.
Yeah. It's interesting because it feels like, well, one thing is I think like some of these terms get thrown around as if they're the same, right? And I like
Mm-hmm.
in my head I've started to try to break down like um AI does not necessarily mean automation, right? AI
No.
also, I think, generally gets conflated with LLMs, where it feels
Mm-hmm.
like there's a whole lot more that's under the AI umbrella. LLM is sort of one type of AI um, modeling kind of thing, right? Where you've mentioned machine learning. I think predictive
Mm-hmm.
analytics could be a part of it, or it's a component.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like people kind of mix those up. And to your point, I think some people are just still have maybe not blinders on, but like their focus is on like small, relatively like replace this small thing that we're doing with something that has AI as in quotes about it. But when they start to open up the aperture a little bit, they start to get overwhelmed, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for those people who are like, hey, do you feel free to disagree with my assertion there about like the mixing of terminology,
Mm-hmm.
which is I think very common in a scenario like this. But also like any recommendations for those people out there in marketing ops who are maybe feeling a little overwhelmed about like where to even start
I know.
with this AI journey, if you will.
Uh, well, most people that I know that did it, let's say within the past 3 years, because that's really where when I went in, we
It's crazy that
we
it's been 3 years. First off, like it feels like it was just like the other day.
I actually started. There was something kept coming in my feed. Right, it was this no code, low code, and I was like, okay, this might be part of it. And I think that is easier to start because I'm not a software developer. I've done Python. I did a serious analytics course where I had to write Python code, but then there's stuff that does it for you. So, that sort of skill set goes away. But
Right.
the whole idea of AI just being connections. It could be, an LLM play. But in terms of starting, I don't start with the low code, no code platforms. And I personally started on Maven, and I stayed there for the whole time. The courses, people then did more courses and more courses, and plus you're with a cohort. And I think,
So Maven is like a training.
yes,
Okay.
like an
Okay.
education platform. And
Okay.
there's others. I'm just saying Maven was where I started.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And they do, or at the time, were really the only ones giving true how to start with AI classes.
Okay.
I think that that's one way to start, just real basic. What is AI? And now, fast forward 2.5, 3 years, you could get the same thing on a YouTube video. I mean,
Right.
honestly, just break it down. I think the hard part is this. Our background is marketing and marketing ops. And so we're flooded with platform. Oh, Salesforce has AI. Look at these Salesforce agents.
Right.
HubSpot has AI. Oh, everything's got AI. So I think there's a false sense of being AI when it's not AI. It is just the platform's version of AI. You have no control over the prompt, little control over the knowledge base,
Mm-hmm.
and its context, and you don't know what model is in there. A true AI person that wants to add the knowledge layer has all the levers to temperature and knowledge base and prompting and system instructions and prompt chaining. And that's the limitation. So
Right.
you might, and then another part of it is some of the AI in these things, it's just filling out fields, right? It's just doing, oh, that field needs this data or that field needs this data. And you can do that now with a lot of platforms. Airtable offers their AI component. Zapier's got one. They've all got one,
Yeah.
but it's kind of filling out the architecture for you, which is part of what AI is. But once the scaffolding is built, where's the knowledge? You still have to create that, and
Yeah.
that cannot be done yet without a human that knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think unless you understand data, and I've always said this is a data problem. Understand not just where the data is, but what the data is, what data matters,
Right.
if the data changes,
What's the
what
story it's telling? Yeah.
exactly. And we're not having enough data conversations.
Well, this goes back to like one of my absolute strong beliefs right now is that we just lack in marketing in general and ops in particular um, the skill set to really
Mhm.
do much with data. Right. I think there's just not a deep understanding about how to do it.
Yeah.
So I want to get like something has just sort of clicked with me that I think maybe is part of the challenge for some people in this, in that we're so used to having what I would call, I guess, deterministic kinds of solutions. So, I get a bunch of job titles. I'm going to put something in there that I define the rules to say this is the job level, right? So that, which
Hmm.
is right, sort of inferred from the title.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think a very obvious use case for probably LLM in this case, right, as part of a flow is to use that to categorize jobs, people with job titles into categories that make sense and use
Hmm.
some intelligence on that, maybe with a little bit of human oversight. But I think, yeah, what you described, right, in some of these other ones, there's a little bit of this trade off, right? You could either do it yourself and you have a little more control over what's happening inside the black box, or you take advantage of some of these tools that are being embedded within other platforms. You mentioned a
Hmm.
few, right?
Hmm.
But it becomes even less apparent, like what's happening within that black box. And so there's this lack of, I think there's this like, can I trust it? Can I not trust it? Yeah. How can I tweak it? Can I tweak it enough? And it feels like maybe that's part of the, like the resistance for people who are struggling with it, where they, yeah, you've got this like, oh, I want to take advantage of the stuff that's being provided in the platforms that I'm used to working in every day, but it doesn't really give me, like, I don't know enough about it. So if somebody starts questioning it, I can't answer it, which puts them in a position of not feeling comfortable about it. And then at the other part is like the other struggle is like, I still have to, like, how do I fit in time to go beyond that? And that's, I think it feels like that's maybe the rub that's, yeah, or the things that are making it difficult for some people to go like, how can I step in and take a step forward in this? So does that sound right to you?
Yeah, it's a gap. And I have friends at very large organizations, and they don't have time to go learn this. And I think when you're a W-2, you don't have a lot of time. We're all overworked. I chose to take time off. Well, I have a side business, and that's what's been supporting me, to be honest.
Right.
But I've taken a lot of time and taken a few projects, but I'm not working 40 hours a week for someone else. It's probably 20. And then I work the other, even weekends to learn this stuff. And I think it's a real miss of an opportunity, because you've got really smart people that are working really hard in these huge organizations that are not getting upskilled in this. Because you really, and here's the other element to this. When you go in and design a workflow, it's not something you touch today for an hour, you come back next Tuesday and you finish it. No, it's deep work. It's 12 hours sitting down, getting up just to go pee or eat, and doing it end to end. And it's heavy, deep work.
Can't outsource that part to AI, right?
You can't. And it is, you've got to remember where you are, and you're deep into that. You're living inside the workflow. I mean, I dream in spreadsheets and workflows because, and not everybody has that ability to say, okay, you wake up at 7 and you realize that you're going to work on this until 7 at night, and you don't stop. You don't answer the phone. You don't get on social, nothing. You're just inside that workflow. And hopefully in that time you have enough good data, good parameters to test it, and it worked out. But some of that can just be, beating your head against the wall to try to make it work. And you've still got to get it reviewed for the client, for the client or for yourself or whoever, to see your art, because you're the one that designed it. And here's the other part.
That's what I'm talking about.
There's
like that's what.
Manual.
Right, and that's hard to test.
Nobody's done this before.
Well, and because if you're using, so in my head, one of the distinctions I've started making is there's the AI. AI can be their AI components can be used in some sort of automation or workflow or agentic model, right? So pick the tool, but there are other more deterministic ones, and I think I get back to like, when you're trying to validate, right? It becomes less of a, did it do what it was supposed to in an exact way, or did it produce an output that is expected, even if I don't understand how it came to that? And that's a very different validation. And if you're not comfortable, if you're the kind of person who's not as comfortable with these sort of
pointing out what's wrong,
right? Like less like, oh, is this directionally correct, right? If you're comfortable with that as a quality assurance level of quality or completeness, then you're going to really struggle with this stuff, I think, right? Because a lot of times what I've seen, even when I'm just using, say, an LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, right? The output I get from my back and forth in terms of prompts, right? Sometimes I scratch in my head, I go, like, where did it come up with that, right? We've all heard about the hallucination thing, but also sometimes it just doesn't freaking follow the directions, right? I remember working on something where I was like, I want you to draft a document. We'd gone back and forth. I had a lot of stuff, draft this document, and it came up with something. I was like, I like that, but I don't like this one piece of it, right? It was like, I think it had done a header image or something. I said,
Mm-hmm.
just go fix that. And it completely redid the whole fucking thing. So,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, no, like,
That process down, right? Like
yeah.
that you can't put the whole prompt in one place. So
Well, and I
that
hadn't, like, I had gone, like, I had produced something that was probably 80% of what I wanted. And it was in
mm-hmm.
line. I'd gone through like as many steps. It was just like this last one, like the formatting, the layout of this document wasn't what I quite wanted. And so I asked it to make one simple change and it completely like it redid the whole thing. And I just couldn't understand why.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff. So if you take that, right, where I'm like going back and forth and it took me time to
Mm-hmm.
do it, and you say, like, I'm going to do something like that, maybe not exactly, and I'm going to make that as a part of an overall flow,
Mm-hmm.
then like, how do you test that and evaluate it? That's like, I
Well,
think that's where the uncomfortable, like people get uncomfortable with, how do I fit this
mm-hmm.
into something where people need to trust the overall output of that, not just one piece of it.
Yeah. I was introduced to a platform called Cassidy. It's a pretty cool platform. I use it mainly for DocGen. So creating a workflow to create an RFP process or a workflow to create a presentation or talking points
Sure.
or something like that. It's to do one thing is 8 different agents or assistants, one
Right.
of which is the JSON. And the JSON is going to be how that document is formatted. And you tack that onto the end and you go, okay, I want the header to be this, da 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 da. And then it goes through that node, which is a code node. And then it's formatting. And that had I not gone through Cassidy workflow on a simple doc generation thing,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have realized that. No, we first have to have a research agent. Oh, and then first we need to have the brand voice agent, or wherever you put that in. How do I sound? So you've got 8 different assistants to do one 8-page output. And
Right.
I know that sounds possibly gratuitous, but it's how you do it.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Going back to my original question to you, like, where should people start? It feels like the way to start is because you can't do all this in one sitting. If you're a kind of person who's busy with their day job and you can't do it all in one sitting,
Yeah.
you could start to experiment with pieces of what might be a bigger process, right?
Yeah.
And you could like figure that out. And then, because I spend a lot of time trying to learn how to just use. I have a bias towards ChatGPT, not for any good reason other than it's just the one like was one of the first ones. I've spent more time with it, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
open to the other ones. But I've done lots of individual things. It wasn't until I'd been doing that for a while where I started lifted my head up and said, okay, I keep hearing about this agentic, right, in quote
Mm-hmm.
stuff. What does that really mean? And I played around with different tools. And I don't think that I think if I'd started with the N8Ns of the world, or like I've had pretty good luck with Relay.app, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
others. I know there are plenty of others. But if I had started with those as opposed to learning how the LLMs work, I
Mm-hmm.
think I would have struggled even more because I would have tried to do what you said. Like I would have tried to do like a whole bunch of stuff in one
Yeah.
AI node of a process, as opposed to breaking it down into smaller chunks, which does feel on the surface to be inefficient. But it feels like now I understand that in order to maintain a level of quality or consistency, that's kind of what you have to do.
Yeah.
Which means then you have to understand like which should be a strength of ops people, right? What's the process that I go through? How can I break down this overall process that I want to automate, have agents do into smaller steps so that I can trust the output at the end? So
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and you evolve to that point.
yeah,
We're all different learners. And for me, I like being part of a learning cohort. And
yeah,
I kind of paused in my MOPS world intentionally because I felt like MOPS wasn't where I wanted to go. So there were a few MOPS people in the community where I ended up, and I still am, but not many. it's CEOs are in there. It's just different people having different questions. And I personally want to be exposed to more use cases than just hooking up a CRM to a marketing automation play. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where, so I went, that's where the decision I made to get out of the MOPS mentality and the MOPS world, because it's all MOPS. And while MOPS is very relevant,
take the blinders off, right?
Yeah, you just need to go and understand it. And it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. I cannot tell you it changes the way you see everything.
Yeah.
It's not just AI. It changes everything. I mean, I look at things so differently now in the world, and it changes everything. And I don't know where to tell people to start that. Okay, so fast forward today. If I were somebody getting started, I would say, go to N8N, do one of their starter templates, and just build it. Just at least get the click and the link and all that stuff. Just understand it.
Yeah.
And MOPS people will understand that, because most MOPS people, I mean, actually, I wouldn't say most MOPS people. There's a set of MOPS people that don't hook systems up. Right. They're not on the API side, and they're not on the data side. But the ones that are will get that part. And I would start there. N8N's gotten a lot better. I was in N8N and I left. I was not a fan of the community. I didn't feel like there was a lot of help there. I thought it was a lot of bravado and not things that were true. And it turned out that was the case. A lot of people were saying, well, we'll come in and do all this magic. And they couldn't. They could just build the thing inside of N8N, and it was visually appealing, but it didn't do anything. So anyway, but now I think it's a lot better, and they do have things for people to go learn quickly. And I think you just do these bites of things, maybe an hour each, and just build, and then move into the data layer. And that's where Airtable and Supabase or Supabase, that's another one. Do you know how to say Supabase?
I have no idea.
But they're very good. And when I started to step into data, and believe it or not, into knowledge graphs. So, and we could go into this, but AI has to know context, and it has to know how things are tagged.
Yes.
So that it can go and retrieve it. This is different than Google's algorithm looking for keywords. So AI has to have context. So you've got to have a defined ontology. And that means, this is a broader word for saying tagging. You've got to know what things mean and then how they're related. And that's where triples come in. So AI can't move beyond that layer. So if you don't have the knowledge graph and the nodes and the ontology, it can't work. So when that light bulb went off in my head, I was like, damn.
Yeah. So that's like providing context to a whole nother level, right?
Yeah. But it's getting it right. It's so it doesn't hallucinate. Right. So you'll see, and they may not be called knowledge graphs, but it is. It's going to.
It's a good. I think it's a good mental model. Like I can already kind of envision it. What you mean, but ontology is a big word that I think most people listening or watching may not really fully understand.
Or so the why behind it, but it's giving the relation of how things are related.
Yeah, yeah. It's like librarian, right? Virtual librarian, right? Not that anybody actually goes to libraries anymore, but that's a whole nother topic. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the, like, can you give us some examples? Maybe going back to early on, like things that you've done where you've kind of that were helpful in your learning, and you still were maybe productive, maybe weren't productive in terms of an actual thing you could apply in the work, but it was like a good learning experience. And maybe something more recent that you've done as you've kind of learned and evolved and what you've seen is possible.
Well, I was lucky enough to have my own business to sort of act as a playground, right?
Sure.
So I automated a lot of the front office, a lot of the back office. of that. And
for
that
your business, you mean?
for my business, and that's where I practiced a lot of it, where I learned real life things that were impactful. So um, that's how I was able to do things live and play around with it. Not
Yeah.
everybody does that. There's still, so if you're in an organization, you've got their platforms, you've got their stuff, and they may not have innate in, they may not want you playing on an agentic platform to understand it all. But so the efficiency, so that's how I learned a lot of it. I just through my own business, my own use case, I built my own knowledge graph. I built my second brain, and that's all knowledge graph work. And I'm actually building the second brain for someone as a client right now. And that's actually all encompassing because a person's second brain that's an evolved person, say a diplomat, does a lot of different things. So you have to connect a lot of different dots for that person. But from a workflow standpoint, I've done lead routing, which was honestly, it was easy. It was an easy problem for when they started talking. I knew right away, okay, that's the problem. We need the lead routing to be fixed. And it was on the sales side. They couldn't keep their territories and their data in Salesforce up to date. And it was honestly, I created an SOP. I created an ideal framework for it. This is how we want it. And they built it. And then we cut lead routing down from 48 hours to 4 minutes. And then I did some predictive lead scoring for somebody, but that's on the mop side. And I've done other boring things that people might find are boring, but it is just workflows and filing. You can build an ontology with a workflow now. Like to do it right, you'd have to go, say you had 1,000 documents. Well, someone would have to physically go through all 1,000 and apply an ontology, relate it, build the triples and stuff like that. So there's workflows.
So, sorry, you've used that word triples now multiple times, and I was just going to assume that it's no. I don't know what you mean. What does that mean?
Yes. So it is meaning that Johnny kicked the ball in the street. You got Johnny, ball, street.
Okay.
Well, someone else could have kicked the same ball into the ocean. So it's how it's related in triples, 3 things. And so long as you can match the 3 things, then everything, you can see how everything is related. And I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but you'd have to see it. It's just applying relationships by 3.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, triangulation on stuff kind of makes sense. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to be, you're going to see my head's like, you're going to see my eyes going back and forth because I'm still thinking about this. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, that was it. It is. And I'm not an ontologist. So there are people, as I stepped into this world, I'm in the other cohorts and taking more classes. And, I'm kind of addicted to taking classes, to be honest, because I don't want to do it myself. I want to sign up for a class that I've invested in, and it's got a beginning and an end date, and it keeps me accountable. Plus you meet people along the way. Right. Which is a great way. And community and networking is going to matter now more than ever. It's going to matter now more than ever because it's going to be who you know.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how smart you are, how many degrees you have. So I don't know if I answered that question.
No, I think you did. I think I'm trying to think about like if I was someone listening, watching, whatever, and I didn't have my own side business, what could I do? And I think about some of the things that I've done because most of mine has been more on a personal level. So interesting. So I've done automation actually related to the podcast where I have now a link for people to schedule this recording, right? And part of what I have done, this doesn't involve AI at all, which is interesting, but I did play with an automation platform that looks for when that new thing is added to my calendar, it goes and looks for new ones and it does a couple of things with it, right? It adds a couple of people to it. I've been thinking about like, how could I take that even a step further? So I still do a manual effort of prepping. So I've taught, in this case, GPT, how I like to do the preparation document. So for people listening, right, we actually do a fair amount of preparation for this. It's not a total wing it thing as much as we try to make it feel organic. But that's still a fairly manual process based on some. Everybody knows we have initial discussions about these things, and I've got recordings. So I would love to get to the process if I could set it up where like it can go back and go find my notes and transcripts from our planning discussions to generate the document. Right, that would be an automation that would benefit for me. It just still doesn't take me as much that much time manually, so it hasn't been top of mind. But I have done other things that are more focused on still manual, but recurring things that I'm doing. Or you kind of hinted at this, like doing research now.
Mm-hmm.
I find it really, really valuable in doing research on stuff. To the point, like I literally had people here, service repair people. We have an old cooktop having problems with it. And so I did a bunch of research on, is this stuff I could fix myself? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I did it with we had a deep freezer that went bad over the summer. And I did a bunch of research, like what are the possible causes? And are there things that as someone who's not super handy could fix? And it gave me a solution that was a $20 solution as opposed to a replace it for a few $100s. Right. Which
Mm-hmm.
is beneficial. And I probably could have done that research on my own, but having the LLM do a bunch of that for me, come back with stuff, and then I could refine it. I've even done stuff if you're the kind of person who likes to cook at home. We took photos of all the
Oh my
stuff in our
gosh.
pantry and said,
I
come up with some recipes.
yes. Take a picture.
That's what we did. Yeah, it's really actually quite
Yeah.
good at that. I found it's not so good at
Yes.
generating photos, or pictures, but it's really good at deciphering what's in photos. I've been
Mm-hmm.
sort of blown. I didn't believe it would work well, and it's been really good. Yeah. So we actually did that, and it generated a number of recipes, and we tried one, and it was terrific. Right now, will everything
Oh,
be that way? Right? I doubt it, but um, so I
and
think
just imagine walking into your kitchen and all you have to do is talk to your kitchen.
yeah.
And like,
So
you're like,
I
you
think
know
I
what
would.
I have? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think if people think about like how could I try to learn some of this stuff even if I don't have a site, like it doesn't have to be a business context. I think you can learn a lot
No.
from doing things. And there are like I've played with connecting like my email to one of these automation platforms using an AI kind of engine to automate drafting replies and things like that, or categorizing things as important or not important. Um, Honestly, I'm a little bit of a like I'm paranoid and like just like the amount of access that those tools currently have to things like your inbox. Not
Yeah.
comfortable with personally. Um, so, but I know it's possible. Like, and it's definitely like that's a very common use case that most of these automation platforms will give you as a starting point. Where you open up your email, classify the emails, draft a reply to those ones that you think are important, and then you can go in and then send you a summary on a daily basis. Pretty common thing it can do. And like I think there are things that people, if they thought about it, even if they're not doing a work related one, because there are concerns about you know uh, security and proprietary, confidential information, things like that, that would
Mm-hmm.
probably make it harder. But there are ways you can learn. So I think that would be
Yeah.
my encouragement is do that kind of thing. So I get so one of the things you have I think encouraged me, and I have yet to really do that. I've already mentioned, right? I have a bias towards GPT because I'm most familiar with that, and then I
Mm-hmm.
particularly like um, Grok because you can put in the what do they call it, a persona? I think you can do the unhinged comedian one, and like I just that's more of an entertainment thing than anything else, just to see what it comes up with. But how do you like? What could you share about what you know about some of the? Let's keep it to the LLMs at this. I guess at this point, what do you see from them? What do you think that they're like? What are their strengths and weaknesses? Because it feels like they all have sort of various things, and I know it's evolving. So like by the time this gets out, it's probably going to change a little bit. But in general, what's your take on those?
I don't really use Grok. I have in the past, but not to the extent. So my main ones are ChatGPT. I just pay the 20, and then Claude. I think I did bump it up to the higher one because Claude has some memory and context issues, and I hate having to start over in a new
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
So, which is very irritating. And then Claude's limitation was not being able to hold the context inside of folders or projects. You can create folders. So I have a huge folder structure, and I was actually arguing with ChatGPT because you used to be able to drop into the folder and ask a question and about anything in that folder. Well, today I found that it didn't have the context of a conversation that I had just had in that same project.
Yeah, I found that I've had to give it explicit direction, go to this other chat that's in the same folder.
Yeah, and that was not the case. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe they realized that they let too much out with ChatGPT, that this is a lot of power requirement to make your, the return of your request happen. But I use both. I actually, I intentionally did not do Claude Desktop until a month ago or 2 months ago, because I didn't want to get too advanced, because I knew that would then, I would build MCP servers. So I've evolved into Claude Desktop, MCP servers on my desktop to go into these systems for me. But that's not for everybody. You still have to know what the hell you're doing or what it's doing, build the JSON to be, uploaded into, N8N. I mean, you've still got to know a few things about that, but that's what I use Claude for that. So, but I still go back to ChatGPT for creative. I've started to write more often. I love to write, and I've started to write more often on LinkedIn, and I've got. Do
you find it better at drafting initial stuff with a lot of context, or you drafting stuff and now asking it to give you feedback on it?
I've been training it for a while, and assuming it's still got the same project context. That was one of my things I was frustrated with, because it has my brand voice, it has my last post, it knows sort of where I left off last week. Because I get burned out. I took last week off, and I was like, I'm not going on LinkedIn. So I took a break. But it's still, so that for that, I use it. I use ChatGPT for that, but Claude I use for the technical stuff. But Claude's gotten better with the creative and the writing as well. And there's so much noise, and I know everyone says this, there's so much AI noise, and now with all these layoffs and things, and I want to post something that matters. It's just not more of an echo of what's already been said. And sometimes that's hard. Yeah. Because you want to call out the noise for what it is, right or wrong, and then, have your point of view. And it's hard to get a point of view sometimes when it's so noisy out there. You don't want to, it's hard to not be afraid, these types of things. So
yeah, it's interesting because like my latest challenge, even though I've got some folder structures inside ChatGPT, because I'm also at a paid level. I think you have to have at least the basic paid level to have folders. Is that even within that, I've got like I actually did something with my wife too she does her work, which there's ongoing doing a lot of the same things, and so having context is really good. What I found is when it goes on for a long time, GPT tends to lock up, right? If the chat thread gets too long. And so that's my latest one, is like, how do I retain what has, like, I did a lot of work training it to voice and stuff like that. But the performance on new asks is still there. And that's my latest challenge. But it's
something changed this week. I don't know what it is.
Well, I've been noticing it for a few weeks, so I don't think it's anything specific to this week for me. But and I think it's just that, right? The threads are just so long now that it may just be browser, right? The browser rendering it takes too long. It is just locking up. So, but again, like, this is like part of the learning process that we go through, and it would help me knowing, like, hey, if I'm building some sort of automation for a work context, and I wanted the context to be there and available over time, right? I need to think about how to structure it so that I don't run into the same thing, an automation step where I'm like, hey, asking a whole bunch of stuff to a LLM engine And because it's like, if it's building it out over time, right, is that going to cause that to slow down and not run correctly?
Yeah.
So things like that, right? So I'm kind of tying that together. Um, let's wrap up here, because you kind of alluded to this. Like, how can people think about what's the right way to start to incorporate AI, LLM, automation / agentic stuff into their, let's keep it to MOps, RevOps, whatever, into their world, where it's a complement, or a, I like the term I heard somebody use, like it provides a time dividend, right? To, like, into their day to day work effort. Like, what are some ways they can think about doing that?
So are you asking from the perspective of the MOPS individual or
Yes.
MOPS for the
Well,
business?
I think MOPS people as individuals, right? But as part of, yeah, a team, even if it's a team of one or two people.
Mm-hmm. Content is a big thing. And I think content's really relevant. But you can't just put it into ChatGPT and say, write an article on this topic. I mean, you've got to iterate it. You've got to give it examples. You have to understand. But I think getting content out for the team, for email's another one. I have not ventured into email for exactly what you said. I want to go in and read my emails and things like that, and I'm scared to. And I use Google Workspace, and I'm scared to turn on Gemini in my email box. To be honest, I don't know what it's going to do.
Right.
But I do think that find a few workflows that are for you and build those out. For the business, if it's easy to show a return, then do it. And you could show it because you want to show ROI, and that's going to elevate you to leadership as well. Look, I shortened your lead routing. We could do this. Look, let's and do some predictive analytics. Pull some data out of sales if you can. Pull
Sure.
the last 4 campaigns. What else did those people do that converted to a sale? Did they visit a certain, and besides the webinar, did they do these other things?
Mm.
And then,
Looking for
yeah,
patterns tied to
exactly. But the problem
desired
here
outcomes.
is most companies aren't capturing those events, right? So you've got to figure out, okay, can I pull in data on the white paper they read, not just the webinar they signed on? Can I pull, and we already know what emails are opened, those
But you
types
could
of things.
provide it. You could provide it not only the data, but also the content, right? The examples of the content. Here's this content. It's tied to this data point or this kind of activity that's in the data, versus this other piece of content. And you could then tell it to look for what are patterns in the content that
Mm-hmm.
are tied to um, better conversions, more pipeline, like whatever that is that you're trying to
And then
optimize for.
possibly look at the last thing they did, like they looked at an ROI white paper or something. Let's
Sure.
just make that up. So then you have the AI note that, right? But then craft a draft email around ROI. And it's something they just did, so it's fresh in their brain. It may not be the thing that pushes them over to be a paying client, but it's something that's relevant. That's something that a lot of people could easily do.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would do, like if I was in an organization that had like product marketing and or just content marketing teams, and we had a sales team that had some sort of call recording platform, I
Mm-hmm.
would be like, that sounds like such great context. If you could capture the transcripts from those sales conversations, then tie it back to which of those ended up turning into deals,
Mm-hmm.
and capture the language that's in there, both client side and sales side, to feed back into how are you thinking about the content you're publishing and the material you're providing to the sales teams, right? Because like, I think there's so much crap out there on B2B websites in particular that
Mm-hmm.
is like just
Mm-hmm.
gobbledygook nonsense that doesn't really tell anybody anything about what you actually do. Like if you could
Mm-hmm.
do that, take that back, feed that back into your content engine, which then hopefully is going to drive more traffic and awareness, right? Like you could build a pretty strong flywheel, I think, in terms of that. That's just simply based on what are the actual terms and uh, things that customers, prospects actually care about, and make sure that you've got
Mm-hmm.
that really well honed on your public facing website and the content that goes with it. Like to me, that's like it's not trivial. I get it, but like it talks about like an ROI over the long run, both short term and long term. I think that one to me is a use case that I would love to see more people trying out.
And
That's
then
my
you could retarget people to go to that new dynamically created blog post that was created, so
yeah
these things are dynamically done because there's APIs in there that are doing it.
yeah
So there's the API work, but
yeah
absolutely.
yeah. So anyway, well, hey, it feels like as so many of these are that we could go on and on and on. But unfortunately, we do need to wrap up. So Tracey, first off, thank you for sharing. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed the conversation. I'm so glad we were able to make this work while everyone else is out there having a fun time at Mopspalooza. But if folks want to connect with you or learn more about what you're doing or go deeper on this topic with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Find me on LinkedIn. My website's AI by Thrive, and I'm Tracey with an EY at AI
That's
by Thrive if they want to email me.
perfect. Well, thank you again, Tracey. Appreciate it. Thanks always to our listeners and now watchers. Now that we're going live with video as well, we appreciate your support. And as always, if you have ideas for topics or guests or want to be a guest, you can reach out to Mike, Naomi, or me. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. Till next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.